Okay, this week's Parsha is the double Parsha of Mattos and Massei. It's the end of the book of Bamidbar. It is Rosh Chodesh Av. It's the beginning of the 9 days. It is the always the Shabbos in the middle of the 9 days is the Parsha Mattos and Massei. There are incredible issues that are spoken about in this week's Parsha, in both of this week's Parshas. One of them we speak about the concept of Ir Miklat, the city of refuge. And we know that the city of refuge is a place where a person goes if they've committed an inadvertent murder. If somebody is climbing down a ladder and by accident they fall off the ladder and end up killing someone, so then they go to the city of refuge. They go to the Ir Miklat. And the reason that they go to the Ir Miklat is because there they, since they committed a murder, it was an accidental murder, but it was nevertheless a murder. And they were the vehicle by which this murder took place. So then therefore they go to be protected in the city of refuge because of the Goalei Hadam, because of the family members of the person who they killed, that they have the ability, they have the rights to be vigilantes and to be able to go and to kill this person. And therefore, because they have the rights to be able to go and kill this murderer, therefore we have to protect this murderer. Now, the reason that they're given the rights, even though that really is contrary to everything the Torah stands for a system of justice. And in that system of justice, there is being tried in a court of Jewish law, and that everybody has that right to be tried in a court of Jewish law. And this person seems not to be being tried in the court of Jewish law. And the reason is because if we tell the Goalei Adam, we tell the blood avengers, the relatives, that they can't kill this person and that they have to wait for justice, it is going to burn inside of them to the extent they're going to go against the law and they're going to end up killing. And therefore, as a concession to human frailty, one of the few in the Torah, but as a concession to human frailty, they are given, the Goalei Adam are given the rights. Once they're given the rights to be able to kill him, we then protect that person, but they, at least that pressure is taken off of them. They know that they could theoretically do this if they want to, and that is enough of justice in their minds. That concept of concession to human frailty finds itself again in the Sefer Dvarim, in the Parsha of Kiseitze. I'm not going to go through the details of the issue now, but the thing that we learn from the concept of concession to human frailty is that if God made 2 or 3 exceptions to the rule in the Torah, that he went against the norm of the Torah in order to be able to protect human frailty, that means that in every other commandment in the Torah, we have the ability to be able to keep it. Even though we look at many of the commandments in the Torah and we say that they're beyond us, we don't have any ability to be able to keep those commandments. Nevertheless, the proof that we're able to is that the ones that we weren't able to are the ones that became a subject of God's concession to human frailty to allow us to be able to not to have to transgress a commandment in the Torah. So this person goes, and not only is he safe from the retribution and the vengeance of the family members, but he is there also because there it's a city of Levites. There are Levium in the city, and therefore those are the people that are really God's teachers. Those are the people that are living life on a certain level, and they can readjust this person's vision and value of life. If a person was used as a vehicle to kill another person, that means that that person needed a message. That person needed to learn something also. And therefore, to be put into a place where he, in a concentrated kind of way, in an intense kind of way, he's going to get a review and a re-look at his life and what he stands for. So then that is the advantage of the city of refuge of the Ir Miklat. There in the city of refuge, he stays until the Kohen Gadol dies. That's a weird thing. The Kohen Gadol, the high priest, has nothing to do with him. The high priest doesn't even have a list of all those people that are in the city of refuge. He had no idea. So the Kohen Gadol's death is going to be the thing that's going to release a murderer. What's the connection between the two? So the commentaries explain the connection between them is as follows. The Gemara says, had the Kohen Gadol davened more, so then there would be no inadvertent murders that would have taken place in his town and under his watch. Now that in itself is a difficult concept. the Kohen Gadol is the whole world is on the Kohen Gadol's shoulders. The Kohen Gadol davened more, so then there wouldn't have been murders there. It's like the Kohen Gadol is not responsible for everybody's bechira, for everybody's free choice. The Kohen Gadol can't be held responsible for everybody's bad decisions. So I think we have to understand that there's a very, very interesting question. We know that inside the land of Israel, there are 3 cities of refuge. In Transjordan, where there were 2.5 tribes, there were 3 cities of refuge. They corresponded on the map across from each other. But the question was, why do you need 3 in Israel if you need 3 in Transjordan? Why do you need 3 in Transjordan if you need 3 in Israel? Meaning that the numbers are not the same. 9.5 tribes lived in Eretz Yisrael. 2.5 tribes lived in Transjordan. If 2.5 tribes need 3, then 9.5 need 9. If 2.5 tribes, if 9.5 tribes need 3, then 2.5 tribes need a much less. Why did they each have 3? So the Gemara gives the following answer. Because in Transjordan, Nefishi Rotzchi, there were a lot of murders. Oh, okay, now I understand. No, I don't understand. Because what do murders have to do with the city of refuge? Inadvertent murders. Killing b'shogeg, that's what goes to a city of refuge. Not killing on purpose, that doesn't go to a city of refuge. Well, then if that's the case, why would it matter that there are many murderers in the Transjordan, and that's the reason why we need to have cities of refuge? It has nothing to do with murderers. It has to do with inadvertent murders. So the rabbis explain that the fact that there were a lot of murders means that life is cheap. And if life is cheap, then there is, by definition, going to be a lot of inadvertent murders. There's going to be a lot of accidents. There's going to be a lot of things happening because no one is being overly cautious, because life doesn't mean that much. In an environment where life is cheap, you end up with all kinds of terrible tragedies and things that happen. What the Talmud is trying to tell us, that had the Kohen Gadol davened more, had he created a more spiritual environment, had he created an environment in his country where life was valuable, Chizkiyahu HaMelech created an environment in the country that raised the level of love of God and of Torah to incredible heights. Had the Kohen Gadol davened more, it doesn't mean that he said 4 tefillas a day instead of 3, or he davened another minute long in a Massei. That's not what it means. Had he davened more means that he created a more spiritual environment. So then, by definition, life would have been seen as more precious and valuable, and there wouldn't have been inadvertent murders. And therefore, on some level, the Kohen Gadol is responsible for this event that took place, not knowing who this guy was, not knowing who the murderer was, not knowing who the victim was, not being connected in any way to the family. He doesn't have to have any kind of connection other than he is the one Jew that's responsible for the country, responsible for the spiritual climate that exists in Eretz Yisrael. And therefore, if something happens, it means that he needs to work harder at creating this spiritual environment. And therefore, when the Kohen Gadol dies, so then that period of his existence is done and is atoned for, and therefore now the inadvertent murder, he can now go back to his place, go back to his family, go back to his life. Chazal tell us that during the time and the reign of Aaron, there was never an inadvertent murder. How do we know that? Because when Aaron died, the Torah says, as different to Moshe, everybody cried. Aaron was the Ohev Shalom v'Rodev Shalom. He was the lover of peace and the pursuer of peace. Aaron was an incredible human being. When Aaron HaKohen died, every single Jew, every single mishpacha, every single couple cried. Now, had somebody killed accidentally and been in an ir miklat, then that person would have gone free. Everybody would have cried minus that one person. He would have made a yontif. I'm out of here. Thank God, I was waiting for that to happen. It looks, what took that guy so long? Right? For him, he would feel that sense of, wow, it's great to be free. But the fact that the Torah tells us that every single person cried when Aaron died, that is a raya that there were no inadvertent murders, because the level that Aaron, the spiritual level that Aaron had set as a Kohen Gadol, was so high that there were no rotzchim, there were nobody that did anything bishkaga. Now it happens to be, I could argue against that raya, but that's not for now. Fascinatingly, the rabbis tell us that the mothers of the kohanim gedolim used to come around with care packages to the people in the cities of refuge. They'd bring them like little shalach manos, just so that they wouldn't be davening for their sons, that their sons should die. Keep them happy in the city of refuge, and then at least they won't sit there and go, ad Massei, God, until when? When's it going to happen that the Kohen Gadol is going to die so I can go home? I want to go home already. So this way, it's not so bad to be here. They get a little gift from the mother of the Kohen Gadol. How can I pray for him? How can I pray for the Kohen Gadol to buy? His mother just brought me cookies. And that was their way of protecting their sons. Now, there's a lot of amazing things about that. But what's really amazing about it is that who are these guys? They're upstanding, nice people. But they're people who an accident happened on their behalf. They were the vehicle for somebody else's death in this world. They needed spiritual rehabilitation. They weren't rishayim on any level. They weren't wicked, but they needed spiritual rehabilitation. You have to imagine that they were on a low level of spirituality, which is why they needed to be lifted up inside of the city of refuge. But God orchestrated it that they would go into the city of refuge so that they can get the kind of spiritual therapy that they needed. You have to imagine that their tefillos weren't that powerful. You have to imagine that you didn't have to really reckon with their prayers. Why is it that the mothers of the kohanim gedolim were worried that this reitzeach, that this murderer was going to pray for the death of their son? Did they really have to worry about his prayers, about his tefillos? And the answer is yes. Consider this. Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol goes into the Holy of Holies. Now I want you to imagine, close your eyes for a moment and imagine you're the Kohen Gadol, you go into the Holy of Holies, and there in the Holy of Holies, you do your service, you do your thing, it's you and God. There are no angels in there, there are no people in there, it's just you and God. Can you imagine that? And then as you're about to go out, you've literally got God's ear. You've got the celestial divine ear. You can say and pray for anything you want. So if it was today, what would you pray for? You'd pray for world peace. You'd pray that the leaders of every country should come to their senses and should stop anti-Semitism. That we Jews should be able to make a Kiddush Hashem. You'd pray for the health and safety of the country, of the people. You know what the Kohen Gadol prayed for? Yehi Ratzain, may be your will, Hashem. That don't entertain the prayers of the people that are traveling on the road. Because those people who are traveling on the road are going to pray for the stoppage of rain because they want to travel well. They don't want to be burdened by rain and mud, and therefore they're going to daven that it shouldn't rain. And therefore, we're worried that there's going to be no rainfall for the Jewish people. So God, please don't listen to their tefillas. How inspiring. The Kohen Gadol has got 1 minute to say whatever he wants. It's like, the famous stories where they offer him 3 wishes and they waste the 3 wishes. I wish I had 4 wishes. Right? So you wasted. So what is going on here? This is what the Kohen Gadol davens for? Talk about being small-minded and being paranoid. It's like, I'm worried that those guys are going to undo everything we're trying to do because we're trying to pray for rain. And those guys are going to pray not for rain. So I'm worried about it. Yeah, he had what to be worried about. Because sometimes if you had to weigh the 2 tefillas against each other, the guys that were traveling, they didn't really want it to rain. They were so committed. They were so into it. They were totally completely involved and engaged in their prayer. They were davening a sincere and a heartfelt prayer that it shouldn't rain so that they could go about their business as they needed to. But the people that were praying for rain, maybe sometimes not with the same kind of power. Maybe not sometimes with the same kind of heartfelt sincerity. And what Chazal are trying to teach us is that no matter where it's coming from, a heartfelt, sincere tefillah is the most powerful thing in the world. And the mothers of the Kohen Gadol needed to worry about that. And the Kohen Gadol, when he went in, bifnayu bifnim, into the inner chambers on Yom Kippur, had to worry about that. Because sincere prayers are powerful. It's a tremendous lesson. It's a tremendous concept. That even though we might be tainted and flawed, nevertheless, when we daven with a sincerity, so then we have an ability to be able to accomplish things with our tefillos that we couldn't imagine. But there is a little more that goes into it besides just sincerity. Because to activate that koach ha-tefillah, that power of prayer, the beginning of this week's Parsha, we talk about the Parsha of Nidarim, we talk about the Parsha of vows. We know that the oral Torah on the vows, the tractate, as we spoke about last week, the setup of the whole oral Torah, the tractate that deals with vows is called Tractate Nidarim. That tractate, Nidarim, is in one of the 6 orders of the Mishnah, the one that deals with marriage and divorce. And our rabbis wonder, why did Yehuda Anasi, Judah the prince, stick it there? What does that have to do with marriage and divorce? So the simple answer that the commentaries bring is because there is a concept that a husband is allowed to release his wife from certain vows, and therefore it is part of the structure of marriage, and therefore it is placed inside of that tractate. Good answer. But I think that it goes deeper than that. Because I think that those laws of a husband being able to release his wife from vows don't appear until chapter 10 in that tractate, towards the end of that tractate. And if it was so fundamental, it would appear more at the beginning of the tractate. And therefore, I think that the whole concept of nidarim, of taking a vow and a promise and a swear, underscores the nuances of speech, the sensitivity to nuances of speech. Because if you say a sentence one way, it could mean this, and you could be taking a vow and a responsibility on yourself. Or if you say it another way, so then it could be considered nothing. You didn't say anything. You didn't obligate yourself to do anything. The nuances and the sensitivity to speech is at the center core of the concept of nidarim. You know, they tell an apocryphal, of course, Massei, but how you say things make a difference. They say that Stalin once got a telegram from Trotsky. That part is not apocryphal. They did exchange many messages, but he got a telegram from him, and the telegram said as follows: "Dear Stalin, I was wrong. You were right. I should apologize. Trotsky." There was a Yid that was sitting in the audience, and he said, "I think it needs to be read with more emotion." So he was invited up to read the telegram, and this is the way he read it: "Dear Stalin, I was wrong. You were right. I should apologize. Trotsky." How you read it, where you put the commas, how the placement of the words, the nuances of the sentence, all of that makes a difference. Words said one way are meaningless, and said another way are filled with meaning. Speech gives a person an ability to be able to communicate, and in order to be able to communicate well, you have to be aware of all the nuances of the words that you're saying and the hidden meanings. What's the basis of marriage? The basis of marriage is communication. And therefore, a tractate that deals with communication, with nidorim, that belongs in Seder Nashim. That belongs in all the laws, amongst all the laws of marriage and divorce, not just because a husband can be made for nidrei ishtay, that a man can release his wife from vows, but because the whole concept of a vow is being careful, recognizing the nuance of your word, recognizing and being conscious of the words that you say. And that's what marriage is all about. It's fascinating that marriage, which is all about communication, is the only mitzvah that's activated by words. Hareyat mikudeshes li b'tabazu. There is no other mitzvah that's activated by words. It's activated by deeds, by things that we do, but not by a word that we say, because it's all about communication. In the Parsha of Nedarim, the Torah says, Lo yachel devarei, that we're not allowed to profane our words. The Yalkut says that Jews are bound by the command not to profane their words, but the nations of the world are not bound by that commandment. And the reason that we're bound by that commandment is because we have incredible power. We have a koyach hadibur, a power of speech that can change the nature of an item. We can turn an item and make it into holiness. We can make it hektish. We can take things and we can make them prohibited to ourselves. That's what a neder, a vow is. That's what nazirus is, being a nazir, saying that I'm not going to drink wine. I'm not going to go to a cemetery. I'm not going to cut my hair. You can prohibit things on yourself. You can take with your mouth and you can change reality. The Rabbeinu Yoina says that if a mouth can do this, if a mouth can make hektish, if a mouth can take an item and turn it into a sanctified item, that means the mouth is like a kli shares. It is like a holy vessel, like a temple vessel. And when the mouth is treated like a kli shares, and then we put sincere thoughts behind those words that come out of that kli, that come out of that mouth, that's when tefillah has incredible power. When tefillah is sincere, and that sincere tefillah is coming from a kli that is a kli shares, that is a temple vessel, that is a holy vessel, a special vessel. When we clean up the things we say, and I'm not talking just about nivel peh, not just about curses and words that are inappropriate, but things that we say to people in a way that are inappropriate, in a way that are cutting and jibing, in a way that are hurtful. When we clean up our mouths, when we fix the kalim, then the sincere thoughts that we put inside of it have an incredible power. And that's what the mothers of the kohanim gedolim are teaching us. That these guys, they're in the process of cleansing themselves, and they're sincere, they're powerfully sincere about wanting to get out of that city of refuge. Their tefillahs are strong. Let's see if we can divert their attention. The Kohen Gadol goes into the Holy of Holies and he prays that God shouldn't listen to the prayers of the selfish people on the road that are not thinking about the good of Klal Yisrael. They're thinking just about what's going to work for them, but they are praying with all sincerity because they've convinced themselves that they're right and it's good. And their mouths might also be clean. Who says they're not bad people? And therefore we have to worry about the power of that tefillah. Can we imagine what our tefillos can accomplish if they come from a place of sincerity and they come from a place, from a vessel that's clean? There was once a poetry contest, and everybody was reading different poems. Fellow gets up and he reads, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." And he reads it in a very beautiful, dramatic way. And the audience stands up and they're clapping and they're giving this guy an ovation. There was a Yid sitting in the audience and he said, let me try. And he stands up and he reads the poem. He reads the psalm with such beauty and with such sincerity. The place gets up on its feet and he wins the contest. The fellow who seemed to be winning goes over to him afterwards and he said, what was the difference between the way I read the psalm and the way you read the psalm? I read it with sincerity, you read it with sincerity. I read it with emotion, you read it with emotion. So he looked at him, he said, but I know the shepherd. Hashem Rayi lo yachsar. God is my shepherd, I shall not want. When we daven, that we know that we're talking to Avinu Shebashamayim, that we know that we're talking to our Father in heaven. And those words come from the deepest of places. And when they come out from the most beautiful of kalim. That's when we know that we have a shot at our tefillos being nishmas, at our tefillos being listened to and heard, because we have the potential. Tefillah is the potential to bring such power and such strength in front of the Rebbeinu Shalom. We have the ability to accomplish incredible things if our tefillah is sincere and the kalim are pure. Just a thought. Everybody should have a beautiful, wonderful, amazing Shabbos. Spread around to your friends that the Mishlei stuff is up on the YouTube channel. YouTube channel is easy to get to. And every day I'll be putting them up there until I find a better way. But right now we'll put them up there straight, not, right after we, within a couple of hours when they're given. And anybody can't make it to the class but is interested in hearing them, so then they're available. Okay, everybody should have a beautiful, wonderful, amazing Shabbos, and we'll see you, Mirz Hashem, on Sunday.
Thank you so much, Rabbi.
Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Shalom lekulam.
Shalom.
Thank you.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat
Thank you
Shalom.
so much.
Pleasure. Shabbat Shalom.